Good afternoon, students. Whether the presentation is visible to you? Thank you. So in the last class, we have discussed about the various DBMS languages and the three schema architecture for a database management system. So using three schema architecture, you can achieve data independence. You can classify the data independence into two types. One is physical data independence and another one is logical data independence. So the last topic in this second chapter is about the various DBMS interfaces and what are the various modules that are available in your database system environment and some utilities related to your database system. So with this, I will complete the discussion related to your second chapter. Then we are having one more topic in your first unit, namely ER diagram. Okay. Now, so the question is, what are the various database interfaces? Okay. So if you take a database management system, it is going to provide the users with the various set of interfaces. Now, simply what I can ask you is, so what is the basic requirement from the user side? Suppose you assume that you want to interact with the database. Suppose I have created a database using Oracle. I have created a table. I have created a table named student, and inside the table I have stored some data. Already I have stored some data. So now what is the requirement is, you want to, as a user, if I ask you to write a query to retrieve the data from the table named student. So what is the minimal requirement? Minimal requirement is you should have some basic idea about the SQL. So without knowing the syntax, okay, so without knowing the syntax, it is not possible for you to write a query. So now the thing is, suppose I don't have any knowledge, I don't have any prior knowledge in SQL, but I want to interact with the database and I want to do some manipulation with the database. So for that, what are the options I can use? So that is the idea behind your database interfaces. Okay. So first topic for today's class is database interfaces. So these are the various types of interfaces supported by the variety of database management system. So I cannot say that a single database management support all these 8 types. So depending upon the requirement, okay. So these types are available in various database management system. So first option is menu-based interface for web clients or browsing. So I don't want to repeat all the 8 types. So we will discuss the concept behind each and every topic. Okay. So now briefly the idea is, your database management system is going to provide you with an interface. So based on that interface, you can construct a query and you can interact with the given database. So what is the idea behind your menu-based interface? So now what your system will do is, it is going to provide the user with the list of options. So for example, you are going to have you are going to have a series of menus. So by selecting the appropriate menu items, what you can do is you can formulate your request. So you need to interact with the various menus to formulate your request. So what is the simple thing? So what I can do is, without knowing the syntax of create command, I can create a table. Without knowing the syntax of select command, I can select the records. Suppose I want to display the data in some sorted order. So there is no need to, as a user, there is no need to have the syntax. So by interacting with the various options that are available in the menus, so what I can do is I can build I can build that particular way. So major advantage of this menu-based interface is there is no need to there is no need to memorize the commands. So the thing is, how to construct a query? You are going to construct a query in a step-by-step manner. See, for example, what you can have is, you can have various menus. What is the option? What is the table name? So like that. So if in the first option may be table name. So if you click the menu called as table name, it can list what are the menu items. So for example, I can have a table called as product, customer, student. So with which table I want to interact. So like that, I can have some series of menus. So if you click the menu, you can have a pull down menu. So item, okay, so it will display the items. So from that, you can select a particular menu item and you can construct the query according to your requirement. So this is the very popular technique used in your web-based user interfaces. Okay, so this is the first interface. So what is the second interface? So I think you people are very much familiar with this interface, apps for your mobile devices. So nowadays what you can do is, so again the standard example is you can consider a banking application or a railway reservation application. So now you want to perform a reservation, you want to reserve a ticket from your mobile device, or you want to deposit an amount, or you want to withdraw, that is you want to transfer the amount from one account to another account using your mobile phone. So specifically these interfaces are applicable only for your mobile devices. So then you may ask a question, then sir, what is the difference? So the limitation with respect to this interface is it is not going to provide you with the sophisticated functionalities. So if you for the same application, if you are going to interact using the PC or your desktop or your laptop, then you may have the interface may be the same, but the number of options available is going to be more. Whereas for your mobile device, so the thing is what they need to reduce the size of the software so that you cannot store the software of larger size in the mobile device. The size of your memory is limited. So what they are going to do is they are going to provide an interface. With that interface, you can execute the minimal set of operations. So what is the minimal requirement? So you can perform all those operations from this particular interface. So what you are going to have is, so you are going to have a built-in programmed interface. So the thing is what again, so these are the standard things. So if you want to use this interface, it will ask you for what? It will ask you for the username and the password, or it will ask for the account name and the password. This basic information is used for the authentication purpose. So I cannot call it as a limitation. One constraint with respect to this interface is the options is going to be limited when compared to the normal interface. So that is the idea behind your apps for mobile devices. So next one is form-based interface. So now what you are going to do is, so I can display a form to the end user. So with respect to this, and a form will be displayed to what? With respect to this interface, a form will be displayed for each and every user. So it will ask for what? It will ask for you are going to accept input from the user. So it will ask for various inputs. So what you can do is you can give your requirement one by one, similar to the first case. See, in the case of menu, you are going to perform a click. So using the mouse, you can pick that option. Whereas here you need to type. So what is the table name? So or if in the form itself, instead of text field, if you are going to have a choice, it will be what? Populated with all the previous tables. So what you can do is you can give your requirement. In some cases, for executing that query, if some data is missing or you need to provide some additional information, but you are unaware of that particular information, in that case, all the additional information will be automatically filled by your system itself. Okay, so that is the major advantage. So if you are going to provide input only for some set of values, so the other thing may be what? If null is permitted, you can skip the input. Otherwise, your DBMS will retrieve some matching data and it will fill the remaining options. So mainly this interface is provided for your named users. So those users are going to repeatedly use the canned transaction. So one example is you are having SQL forms. So SQL form is a form-based language. So you can use this form-based language in conjunction with the relational database schema. So that is the third interface. So fourth one is the graphical user interface. See, we have discussed about the various schemas, and if you remember the concept what I have explained in the under the topic conceptual data model, what are the concepts you are going to use? Entity, relationship, and attributes. So you are going to have a diagrammatic representation. So like that here, with respect to graphical user interface, what you can have is you can represent the entire database schema in the form of a diagram. So your entire database schema will be displayed in the form of a diagram. So what the user can do is, so simply you can select the option by interacting with the diagram. So by manipulating the diagram, the end user can construct the query. So for displaying the schema in a diagrammatic form, what you can do is you can go with the one simple thing. What you can do is you can go for a menu-based interface, or you can use a form-based interface. So this is the idea behind your graphical user interface. So next interface is natural language interface. So now what is required is, so in this case, so this is similar to what? Similar to your high-level programming language. So now from the end user side, what is the requirement is, you want to supply your requirement in a high-level language, that is like a English-like statement. So your request is written in English. So this specific interface will accept the user requirement or user input written in the form of English. So in some cases you can customize according to your language. You can have option for different languages. In general, what I can say is you will have support for English language. So what you are going to have is, so this is similar to what sentimental analysis. So what you need is, so you need to convert the requirement given in English according to the query language. So that what we are going to use is, we are going to use some predefined dictionary. It is, so now in this case, what are the keywords you have to look at? Select, create, from. So like that, you are having some specific keywords associated with the associated with the query. So this language is going to have its this language is going to have its own schema. So that is similar to that is similar to your conceptual schema. So what we are going to have is, in addition to that own schema, we are going to have some dictionary. So in the dictionary, we will be having some important words related to that particular language. Okay. So now, what is the need for this dictionary? You need to interpret the query. So the thing is, you need to interpret the request given in English, and you need to appropriately convert it into the query language. Suppose your request may be retrieve all the values from the table called the student. Now how to map this? Select the star from student. So now for this process, in order to convert it into an appropriate query language, you need You need a dictionary. For performing the translation, you need the dictionary. Okay. Now in this case, suppose what they are trying to say is, see, suppose you are at the time of performing translation, so some data is missing. It is not possible for this interface to convert the English request into a query language. So at that time, what is the option you have is, this interface is equipped with the dialogue mechanism. So what it can do is, it can pop up some sequence of dialogues asking some clarification from the user. So if you are going to, in each and every dialogue, so what is the answer given by the user, that will be taken as a key, and according to that, the query will be generated, or from the English statement, the query will be constructed. So that is the interface, that is the idea behind your natural language interface. So next interface is speech input and output. So almost most of you might have interacted with this interface. Okay. But you are having, this interface is applicable for what? This interface is applicable for some limited set of applications. So for inquiring the flight arrival time, or for see, suppose another example, simple thing what we can say. Suppose if you want, while performing an online transaction, we want to get the OTP, one-time password. So for those type of application, what you can do is you can use this interface. So again, for this interface also, what you need a specialized library. You need a synthesizer. You need some appropriate software for speech recognition software. So you need to convert in some cases, you need to convert the text into some figures or numbers, and numbers into some text. Okay, so vice versa, both are required. So this interface is equipped with what? All those functionalities. So that is the idea behind your speech input and output interface. And finally, the last, I think this is the last, okay. So last but one. So interface for your parametric users. So an example for parametric user is your bank tellers. Bank tellers are nothing but your clerks. So these users will repeatedly use the same operation, or they will perform the same operation again and again. So the thing is what? See, nowadays, okay, see, if you have performed a manual transaction in a bank, so in the normal case, if you want to withdraw an amount, you will fill the withdrawal slip, you will submit it to your clerk. He will, after receiving the slip from you, the clerk will input the account number, check for the balance. If you have sufficient balance, he will pass it. So that is that user comes under the category called as parametric user. So what they are going to do repeatedly, they are going to give an account number, check for the what? Check for the balance. So now for this operation, what is required is you can allow the, see, instead of navigating some or instead of selecting some 4 or 5 options for checking the balance, what you can do is you can equip these users with some shortcut keys or some specialized program keys. For example, to check the balance directly after giving the account number, if the user presses F5 or F8, you can program some key, you can program some function key. So such that, so immediately what? So that function will be invoked and the user can retrieve the answer. So that is the idea behind your parametric user. One is you can have a program key or you can have some shortcut command. So you want to check the balance. So you can press Ctrl B or you can press Alt B, like that. In this interface, what you can do is you can provide you can provide some sophisticated interface to the particular group of users. So this specific interface is only for what? This specific interface is only for your parametric users. So if you take your database administrator, so for your database administrator, you need some separate set of interfaces. Okay. So there is no need to have what? Speech to text. See, the thing is, so all with respect to database administrator, there is no need for form-based or menu-based interface. Why? Because these people are expert in that particular domain. They are familiar with the various SQL syntaxes. So now, with respect to these database administrator, you need an interface for performing these following options. They want to create a new user account. After creating an account, they want to assign some permission or they want to modify the permission associated with an account. They want to assign some authorization mechanism. So after creating a schema, they want to modify the schema. They want to reorganize the storage structure. So for all these operations, you need a what? So all these operations comes under the category 1. See, if you are familiar in OS, you will be having 2 modes, user mode and the kernel mode. So what are the interfaces we have discussed so far? All those interfaces are for your end users. So this database administrator is going to use the privileged software. Okay, so they are going to use some privileged commands. They are going to invoke some privileged commands. So these persons need some sophisticated interface, or these persons need some separate interface which is not similar to the other existing interfaces. So simply, conclusion is your DBMS should provide various types of interfaces to support a variety of users or to support heterogeneous group of users. So that is the idea behind your interfaces, DBMS interfaces. So now next topic is, so if you take a database management system, so it is not going to be a single program, it is going to be a collection of programs. So what are the various components that are available inside a database management system, or what are the various modules that are available inside a database management system, and what is the functionality or what is the responsibility of each and every module? Okay, see, if you take the users, so you can have different types of users. One may be if you take a database administrator can invoke DDL command. If you take an application programmer, they will use a what? They will use a high-level language. If you take a parametric end user, they will use the canned transaction. So appropriately, so the thing is, inside the database management system, you are going to have various modules. So with which module the user is going to interact, and what is the responsibility of that particular module, or what is the functionality associated with that particular module. That is the next topic. Okay. So actually, this figure shows the various modules that are available inside the database management system. If, for example, see here, these are the end users. Okay, so the end user may be a DBA staff, or a casual user, or your application programmer, or a parametric users. So now the DBA staff is responsible for what? So just now we have discussed they will be using some privileged commands. So they will be using DDL statements. So what are the modules you are going to use? So the end user, they are going to directly supply the query. For that you need a query compiler. With respect to DDL statement, you need a DDL compiler. So here your DML statement will be embedded. So we have discussed about what? Host language and the sub language, high level language, procedural oriented language. The DMLs, you can classify the DML into two types. Okay. So here, so inside the application program, you are going to have the SQL statement embedded inside the application program. So in that case, you need a pre-compiler. So this pre-compiler can process only your SQL statement. So for processing the remaining statement, you need to use what? You need to use the host language compiler. So your pre-compiler will check the syntax of the what? It will check the syntax of your DML statement. Then you need to use the what? Then you need to use the DML compiler. Okay, so it will extract the from the programming language. It will extract the DML statement and it will pass it to the what? DML compiler. So here you are having what? A runtime database processor, and the thing is what? The arrow shows the interaction between the various modules. So now we will try to identify the functionality of each and every module. Okay. So the thing is, you can classify this figure into two parts. So in the top and in the bottom. Okay. So in the top, what we are going to have is we are going to refer the various users of this particular environment. So sorry, who are the various users and what is the interface they are going to use. Okay. So now the users are parametric users, application programmer, casual users, and your DBA staff. So in the bottom, what we are going to have is you are going to have the various modules. The lower part of the diagram shows the what? Internal modules of your database management system, which is responsible for storing the data and processing the transaction. So first, we will start with the DDL compiler. Okay, then we go to the what? Query compiler. So, what is the role of your DDL compiler? Okay. So, the thing is what? Your DDL compiler is responsible for processing the schema definition. So, the thing is, you are going to specify the schema definition using a data definition language. Or simply what I can say is, see, suppose you want to create a table. So what will be your command? Create table student within bracket, student name, field name, data type, size. You are going to give the what? You are going to specify the structure for the table called as student. So what your DDL compiler will do is it will extract that information and it will store that information as part of what? It will extract the information related to the structure and it will store that information as part of your system catalog. So another name for your system catalog is data dictionary. So the data available inside this data dictionary is called as metadata. Why it is called as metadata? It is not the actual data. Your metadata is a data that describes the data. So that is the metadata. Okay. So now, what is the information you are going to store inside the DBMS catalog? So you will be storing what? So you will be storing the name, data type, constraints. Okay. So what is the storage detail? So all the information will be extracted from the DDL schema and it will be stored in your DBMS catalog. So that is the role of what? That is the role of your DDL compiler. So next, if you take the casual user, they will be using the interactive query language. So why we are seeing what is the difference between parametric end user and the casual user? Parametric end user, they will frequently interact with the database and they will perform the what? They will interact with the repeatedly. They will interact with the database by performing the same operation or for performing the same operation, by invoking the same command for performing the same operation. Whereas if you take the casual users, they will occasionally interact with the database. Okay. So casual users, they will occasionally interact with the database. So the thing is, they want to extract some data or they need to infer some data from the database. So for interacting with the database, what is the language they are going to use? They are going to use interactive query interface. Now, so what is the responsibility of your this query compiler? What your query compiler is going to do is, see, first the thing is, you need to check the, so your casual user is going to supply a query. So what is the first requirement? First requirement is you need to check the correctness of the query. For that, you need to pass the query and you need to validate the query. You need to check whether the user has used the correct syntax in the query. Then you need to identify the what is the table name, what are the fields. So now the thing is, so all these things will be performed by your query compiler. So it will convert it into what? Your query compiler will convert the query into its internal form. Then it will be used by what? So so here, inside this query compiler itself, you are going to have an optimizer. See here, you are having an execution. The thing is, so after parsing and validation, what is the next step is, your query compiler need to generate an appropriate execution plan. So how to execute that particular query? So already we have discussed about query optimization. Okay, query optimization, how to express the query cost and all. Okay. So what are the various parameters you can use to express the cost involved in executing a query? Okay. So now what the query optimizer will do is, so it needs to, the responsibility of the query optimizer is to generate an efficient execution plan. So for that, what it can do is, it can perform some rearrangement. So if you remember the example I have explained along with the advantages of DBMS. In some cases, first you can perform select, then project, or project followed by select. Both give you the what? Both give you the same answer. But the thing is, in some cases, if you are going to change the operation, that there is a chance for what? There is a chance for reduction in the cost. So you want to eliminate the redundancy. Okay, then you can employ a efficient search algorithm to retrieve the records. So now for this thing, for identifying all these things, what your query optimizer will do is, it will refer your DBMS catalog or system catalog for the statistical and other information that is stored as part of your DDL compiler, and it generates the code. Then what it does, then after generating the code, it passes that code. Okay, So it passed that code to your runtime database processor. So this, based on the query execution plan, what is the responsibility of this runtime database processor? It will fetch the data that is available in the database. So that is with respect to the second module called. So I have completed two modules. One is DDL compiler, functionality of DDL compiler, and another module is query compiler. So next thing is application programmer. So here, so application programmers, they will interact. So for interacting with the database, they will be using an application program. So or they will interact using a high-level programming language. So usually your application programmers use high-level languages like Java, C or C++ to develop the programs. So what they will do is they develop the program and they will submit the program to your pre-compiler. So what is the role of the pre-compiler? It will analyze the program and it extracts the DML command from the application program. So these commands are king. So if you so here you are having what is the first step? You are going to have the pre-compiler. Pre-compiler will extract the DML statement. After extracting the DML statement, it is going to send the DML statement to the DML compiler. So it extracts the DML commands and it is going to pass the DML commands to your DML compiler for compilation and to create the equivalent object code. So the remaining program, okay, so the remaining program, that is it may be in C or C++, the remaining program is sent to your host language compiler. So this code, the object code generated by the DML compiler, okay, you are going to link that code with the rest of the program to form the canned transaction. Okay. So the thing is, so it can be what? So here, so what you can do is, see here. So the thing is, so here, so it is going to generate the code related to what? Code related to that particular programming language. So what this DML compiler is going to do is, it is going to refer the data or the content that is available in your DBMS catalog, and it will be linked with the linked with this object code to form the what? To form the canned transaction. So this canned transaction may be used by this canned transaction can be used by the parametric users. So what is the role of the application programmer? Your application. So now with respect to this context, your application programmer, responsibility of the application programmer is to develop the canned transaction. So the thing is what? So here it is going to have a water. So from the canned transaction, you can have a command to interact with the what? To interact with the runtime database processor. So if you take the runtime database processor, it executes the what? Privileged commands, executable query plans, okay, and the canned transaction. So if you see here, see. So what are the input to your runtime database processor? So it receives the input from your DBA staff, from the casual user, and from the what? And from the parametric users. So your runtime database processor is going to execute the commands from DBA, from your database administrator, or from your application programmer and your parametric end user. So what it will do is, so it will interact with the DBMS catalog and it can update the data that is already stored in the DBMS catalog. So for retrieving the certain data, what it can do is, it can interact with the stored data manager. And if you want to perform some read-write operation, so the thing is what, if the data is not in your buffer, if it is available in the secondary storage device, you need to make use of your input-output device. For that, it is going to rely on the operating system services. So what is the need to use the operating system services for retrieving or for transferring the data from the secondary storage device to the main memory? You can make use of what? You can make use of the operating system services. And another responsibility, see, in some database management system, what some database management system is going to do is, it is not going to have a separate module for buffer management. So the buffer, it will simply pass the responsibility to your operating system. So one of the responsibility of your operating system is memory management. So your buffer management is part of your memory management. Whereas in some database management system, so you are going to have a module. So it, on its own, it is going to take care of what? On its own, it is going to take care of the buffer management. So and finally, what are the other things you are going to have? In the bottom, you are going to have concurrency control and backup and recovery mechanism. Okay. So what is the use of the concurrency control mechanism? Okay. So the idea is what? So if you, in order to avoid data inconsistency, again, if you are going to have a single user interface, there is no need for any concurrency control mechanism at all. But you need a backup and recovery mechanism. So the thing is, if you are going to have a multi-user environment, in that case, you need to employ appropriate concurrency control mechanism. Otherwise, it may lead to what? It may lead to data inconsistency. So these are the various components that are available inside the database management system. So finally, the next idea is about database system utilities. So here they have listed 4 different utilities. So these database utilities, okay, so it is used to aid the database administrator. These utilities are used to reduce the workload associated with your database administrator. So now, so what is the first utility? First utility is loading. So the thing is, what they are saying is, see, suppose you assume that, so initially, now for a given application, now only you are going to create a database, or you assume that for a given, for a specific application, you have created a database from the scratch. You have created a database for a particular organization. So before that, the organization maintains the data in the form of a sequential file, or in the form of a text file, or in an Excel file. Suppose, see, if the size of the data is small, 10 records, 5 records, or 100 records, or even 1000 records, what you can do, you can manually type, or you can manually feed the old records to the new database. Now, with respect to this loading, what is required is, already suppose you assume that you are having a history, that is, you are having some, your old data, you are having some lakhs and lakhs of old data. You want to move all those old data to your new database. So for that, you can make use of this loading utility. So what is the role of this utility is to load the existing data file. So what is the input you have to give? So what is the source from where you are going to extract the data file, and what is the target database? So now what is the requirement is, okay, see, the explanation may be simple. So, but inside what it has to do, what is the responsibility is, it need to appropriately format the record, and it need to insert the record inside the database. If there is a mismatch in the format, it will throw you an error. So your data won't get inserted inside the database. So the second utility is the backup utility. So what is the responsibility of this backup utility? So you are going to have a database. So usually you may be familiar with the concept called as what? Mirroring mechanism. So the thing is what? So if you want to have a robust database means it is capable of withstanding any type of failures. So in that case, you need to what? You need to maintain the exact replica of the database. So what you are going to do is, you are going to, so even in a physical catastrophe, even in the worst case scenario, you should be in a position to extract the what? You should be in a position to extract the data from the desired database. So what is the role of this backup utility is, regularly what it is going to do is, it is going to take the data from the memory and it is going to store it in some of the secondary storage device. So it may be your magnetic tape or some other secondary storage device. So that device is capable of withstanding the catastrophic failure. So that is the role of your backup utility. So what is the third utility? Your database storage reorganization. Again, the concept is simple. What is the need for this utility is, so previously what we have discussed, you need to generate a query efficient plan. Okay, efficient query execution plan. So in some situation, what is the requirement is, so you need to, okay, so you need, depending upon the file organization technique, what you are going to use in the secondary storage device, you need to reorganize the data. That is without affecting the water, without affecting the current application. So that what we have discussed in the yesterday's class, physical data independence. Okay. So your database storage organization is what? Okay. So if in order to increase the speed, or suppose you want to create an additional access path, so for that what you need is you need to reorganize the data. So automatically this utility will reorganize the data in order to increase the performance. And finally, the last utility is performance monitoring. So this utility will be used by your DBA. So this utility is going to provide some useful data, or it is going to provide some statistical data to your database administrator. So based on this statistical data, your database administrator can make appropriate decision. See, suppose you are, already there are lot of users. So your database is taking some more time to provide responses, and there is a request from 10 users or 100 new users. So in that case, so whether to allow all those, whether to provide authorization or whether to provide permission for all the new users. So those type of decisions. So simply I am saying, okay, as an example or for better understanding, I am giving this as an example. Okay. So the thing is, they are going to measure the response time. So the thing is what? So based on the statistics, they can plan for some reorganization. If the response time is satisfactory, no need to go for reorganization. If the response time is more, they can go for water. They can drop the existing index and they can create an index for a new field. Or instead of having an index on a single field, they can go for, instead of having a simple index, they can go for a composite index. These are the options that can be used by your database administrator. So ultimately, what is the use of these utilities? These utilities are to improve the performance. So these are some of the utilities supported by your or utilized by your database system. So as a summary, I have started with the various interfaces and I have explained the idea behind each and every interface and the suitable group of users that can make use of that particular type of interfaces. So inside the database environment, what are the various modules you have? DDL compiler, query compiler. So what is the role of each and every module? And finally, I have listed 4 database system utilities. So what are they? One is loading, first one is loading, second one is backup, third one is database storage reorganization, and fourth one is performance. So you can check your textbook. I have completed first 2 chapters. So mostly next weekend, Friday or Saturday, you may be having the first quiz. So I haven't received any official information from the other staff members. Once it is finalized, I will tell you the exact date and timing by Monday or Tuesday. Okay. Thank you.